Hello everyone and welcome back to Silicon Sounds, audio for the rest of us. Today I'm going to have a look at a hot product that's out there right now. This is the Moondrop CHU. Beautifully designed IEM, very comfortable, love the paint job, love the finish. It does have a captive cable which might turn some people off right away, but honestly the construction of this is quite good. The cable itself is great. It does resist tangling quite a bit, as you can see. Even if I put it together, it wants to come apart. I didn't notice any undue microphonics from the cable. All in all, no issues with the cable whatsoever. In particular in this price range, which is about $20 to $22 USD, I believe at the time of this video, if I'm not mistaken. Now, let's talk about the sound. We're going to go through this really quickly. In my last video, I did compare it to the Astrotech Vesna, this product right here. And I'll tell you why these two are very different, polar opposites in terms of sound presentation, in my opinion. Here I'm using as a tip the original Final Audio tips, which work quite well for my tastes. Of course, yours might be different. Let's talk about fit and finish. Fit and finish is great. Definitely up to Moondrop standards. Again, it does have a captive cable, but it feels quite secure. The finish, the look of it is awesome, whichever way you want to put it. It's awesome. It's just a great looking IEM for the price. Presentation it was great as well. The unboxing experience was quite nice. Let's talk about the sound. Bass. This is the controversial part of the CHU. There are many who say it doesn't have bass, it's lacking bass. I beg to differ. The CHU is really sensitive to tips. Now, someone might say tips don't make a difference. They absolutely make a difference. And I'm not just talking about the seal, it's also insertion depth. Narrow versus wide will either accentuate or serve to diminish certain frequency ranges. The tip material, of course. The inside is much, on these Final Audio E tips, of course, the barrel is much more stiff than the collar. And you just have to search tips. I find that the included spring tips that are a bonus that come with the CHU, which I should have brought up for the video, but I didn't, are excellent tips, but not for the CHU. Even though they're included, it's like getting some very higher end tips for free in the box. Keep them for other IEMs. But for the CHU, I had to use and search for tips. I went through a bunch of different ones. And even these Final Audio E may not be the last ones I use on the CHU. I use the Asles Sedna Airfit as well, wide bore. But I found that I had a smoother overall experience with the Final Audio E, which were my go-to tips for a long time. Let's talk about the sound. Again, going back to the bass. The bass is articulate. It's not overly done. It's fast. It's in terms of rumble, it could be better. Yes, there is a little lacking in terms of solid raw output when it comes to bass rumble. But when it comes to the articulation, the speed of the bass, it's quite pleasant. Again, use the proper tips, get the proper seal, make sure to get good insertion depth, and you'll hear what these are capable of. Mid-range. These, I would call these mid-centric neutral, if that makes any sense. These are definitely a mid-centric IEM. Lots of the action for these IEMs come in the mid-range. From the lower mids on up, bass bleed is pretty much non-existent, of course. With these, the mid-range, the lower mid-range is very expressive going into the upper mid-range. Lower mid-range could lack a little bit of bite or I would say power or grip at times. But when it comes to upper mids, these things are a beast in terms of their ability to really push out there the sound. I will say that they are mid-centric, but more in the upper mids. Now this is a plus and a minus for the CHU. The plus is you get lots of detail, definitely more detail in terms of micro detailization than, for example, the Astrotech Vesna. You get a lot more detail. Female voices on this is really good. You hear all the nuances for something in this price range. That's incredible. You get a lot of different things going on. You don't feel like you're missing much, but this is also its negative. It does have, in my opinion, a bordering on somewhat excessive pinna gain for the upper mids. Again, not necessarily a popular opinion, but it's mine, and I'll stick to it. Which can lead to some harshness when pushed hard. The CHU, when pushed hard, can become somewhat harsh. I've used it on many different sources. I've used it even on a tube amplifier, which works really well with these, a hybrid tube amp. And it can lead to, in some tracks, it's not as forgiving as, let's say, the more organic but tamer sounding Vesna. So the CHU can be pushed into sounding somewhat harsh at times, in particular at higher volume levels. But at moderate or moderately high volume levels, you won't find you're missing much in the mids. In terms of treble is quite good on these. Extension is good. Speed, articulation, air, they're all there. In terms of overall or absolute resolution, not the best I've heard, of course, but in this price range, it's one of the better ones. The cohesion of the whole frequency spectrum begins at the bass and ends in the upper treble. And that's what the CHU has that's quite good when you realize its bass potential. Again, a lot of folks don't seem to spend the time with the CHU to realize its bass potential. Again, mid-centric lovers will really gravitate towards this IEM. I listen to a mix of smooth jazz, house music, alternative. For example, lots of Massive Attack on these, and really was impressed with the overall cohesion of the sound. Now, really good from top to bottom. Really sounds quite good. But what's missing here? What's missing here is that last measure, or a couple measures actually, of organic presentation. What do I mean by organic? Really hard to explain. In my mind, I know exactly what it is, but in words, it is the natural presentation that really takes away that barrier between you and music that's being reproduced as to just music. I talked about the organic presentation of the Vesna, other IEMs that have a fantastic organic presentation would include, for example, the Tin Hi-Fi T3 Plus. Those are more warmy, neutral kind of IEMs, while this is mid-centric, a little bit colder. But still, on certain instruments, stringed instruments, it just lacks that last measure of organic sound. That being said, everything else is in place with respect to soundstage and imaging. The CHU does quite well to present a believable soundstage as opposed to overblown in any one direction, height, depth, width. It's quite together. They do image quite well. Soundstage is believable. Very pleasant listen to. Hugh Masekela, a couple of his live tracks, which are recorded very, very well, really sound good on these. You really hear the placement of all the instruments. You even can kind of figure out the size of the auditorium that they're in. Quite an achievement for something of this in this price range. Again, organics. So for the positive for the CHU, I would have to say it's the cohesion of sound, the presentation of detail, micro, macro, are very well balanced. Very clear and open sound. Even compared to the Vesna, the CHU does sound more open, which it's almost like more air to breathe. It's in a bigger space, but still quite believable in terms of its dimensions. Negatives would be just a couple measures of organic sound that are missing. It is a mid-centric, in particular with the upper mids, which I find for my taste, could have been pared back a little bit and tamed a little somewhat. In particular, in relation to the bass, which is good. The bass is good on these, with care for tip selection and proper depth insertion and seal. The tips are, the bass is good. If anything, once that seal is achieved, the bass actually stands out as being really good. It doesn't dig as deep nor have the impact of other IEMs in this price range, but what it has is articulation and speed. The bass is much like you would hear, for example, on the HC Sound Heart Mirror, if you want a comparison, right? Sometimes you want more, but I think the CHU does actually have more than the Heart Mirror when, again, insertion depth, tip selection are selected. And of course, driving it with a good source that has a good amount of clean power won't take away from any of the fullness and richness of the sound that the CHU is capable of. Do I wreck these? If you're that kind of listener that likes the mid-centric, if you listen to a lot of classical vocals of that matter, in particular female vocal, for male vocal, these are okay. They do lack a little bit of body, but again, with the proper seal, they do come alive and sound really, really good. I would say it's for those type of people. There's no one earphone that's good for everyone. Will I be reaching for these? I'll reach for these on occasion, although I have to admit that not as much as a few others that I have. I do really enjoy the CHU, and I will continue to keep listening to it. But with any other IEM, you have to know what your preference is. I seem to prefer a kind of warm neutral with great treble extension. That's my preferred sound signature. Once again, warm neutral with very good treble extension and a very believable sound stage and imaging. Not constrained in a box, but not so wide as to sound unnatural. And my number one metric for any earphone is organic sound. So I give the CHU a rec, but know what you're getting. And that's it for this quick review of the Moondrop CHU. Once again, please like and subscribe to this channel. Give me a thumbs up if you like the review. Please support the channel, and we'll see you soon. Have a great day from Silicon Sounds.